So just under a month ago, my father passed away. If you've been following me for a while, you know that it wasn't unexpected. He had ended up in the hospital back in December for 4 months. And we didn't know how long he would last. It could have been years, could have been months. It turned out to be months. And actually, the day he died was a Sunday, which I always host a live stream here on YouTube, leading a meditation class. So the evening that he passed, you can go back on my channel and watch that live meditation. But I've been sitting with having lost my father now for a few weeks, and grieving is generally not what you expect. Or I should say, when you grieve, there will always be things you did not anticipate. And one of the things that has surprised me through my process of adjusting to my father no longer being here is the expectations other people have about how I should process my feelings and how I should respond. Which is strange, because I didn't anticipate that other people would have opinions about how I should be living my experience. And so I thought it'd be just interesting to be kind of candid and share with you what's been going on for me since my father passed 3.5 weeks ago. So hey, nice to meet you guys. My name is Kalen. This is my YouTube channel, Ecstatic Self, where we explore the intersection of spirituality, meditation, mindfulness, with sex, sexuality, embodiment, and then bringing that all together to find a joyful life where we live authentically and find a sense of belonging in ourselves and in the world. A lot of my spiritual beliefs I got from my father. My father believed in reincarnation. He had past life memories of being a druid at a megalithic stone circle like Stonehenge. He believed in the power of bodies and sex to transform and inspire. My father was a nudist when I was a kid. He used to be very sex positive. Before my mother, he used to go to sex parties and sex clubs, and so I definitely inherited some of that from him. My father was also really incredibly intuitive. He was the kind of person who could pick up an object and tell you its history, where it came from, who owned it, any significant emotions attached to it. There was actually this really amazing story where he and my mother were at an event, some sort of party, some sort of ball, and there were tarot card readers there for the guests. And my father unintentionally touched the hand of the woman doing the reading for my mom. And my dad said, "You have a 15-year-old girl, and she's being sexually abused by a man in your house." And the woman just started to weep because she said, "My boyfriend has been living with us for a few months, and she came to me the other day and told me that she was being abused, and I didn't believe her. I thought she was just acting out or seeking attention." My father believed in the dignity of all people. He treated everyone with respect. Didn't matter their race, their age, their religion, their background. He treated every person with dignity and would befriend anyone, which was so beautiful to see. So there is a lot about him and the way he lived his life that you can see in the way that I approach my spiritual practice, the way I approach you guys, the way I kind of view our purpose here on the planet. He was the one who got me into helping other people when I was a little kid. He used to run motivational seminars at the local library. He'd get up on a stage and like trying to help community members get more aligned with their purpose and their values and live better lives. And here I am now, 30 years later, doing something very damn similar on the internet. And I look at both of my brothers. I have two half-brothers. My dad's sons from his first marriage. They're both coaches. They're both helping people. You know, me and my dad did not have an easy childhood. I was very disconnected from my father for a lot of my upbringing. One, because he was struggling with depression. He had lost all of his money, his business, his self-worth when I was a little kid. So he was going through his own shit. But then also too, when shortly after I met Anthony and my partner, my husband, and my father met him, and he came to see the love between us and accepted us in a way that my dad was born in 1939. He was not very open around same-sex attraction, homosexuality. He didn't want to talk to me about it when I did my coming out experience. When he met my husband, he fell in love with him. And it provided him healing to see our love and the relationship we created together. So much so that a couple of years later, around Christmas time, I was driving with my dad and he came out to me as bisexual. But I grew up in a household where that tension was there. My father was very much afraid of his sexuality. And I can remember being a little kid and him telling me he thought I might be gay. And I could feel the tension in that. Even though he didn't say anything bad, like I could feel it. And you felt that it was something horrible. And so growing up, it was very difficult between us. My father wasn't always an easy man. He had a lot of anger. He had a lot of frustration. He felt very disappointed in the way his life turned out in many ways. But in the last couple of years, my father showed up for me in ways I never expected. There was a time a couple of years back where several things were hitting me really hard in my personal life, regarding my sexuality, regarding my relationship, regarding my body. And I was able to talk to him candidly about all these difficulties, and he gave me nothing but unconditional love. And in his last year of life, this last several months of being sick, not sure how long he was going to make it, I would try to drive out to Chicago or fly out to Chicago every couple of weeks to get to spend a little bit of time with him. And even though he didn't really want to talk about things or reflect on his life or tell stories, he just wanted to be close. He wanted me to hold him and hold his hand. And when I would sit by him or with him, you could just feel the love emanating off of him. You could just see the unconditional love in his eyes. How amazing that was. His last few months on earth were probably his kindest. He paid my mother more compliments, she says, in the last year than he had in the previous 39. And when he passed, he was surrounded by loved ones. My mother was holding his hand the whole night. He was medicated, so he wasn't in any pain. And we believe there was an element of choice. We think he knew that were he to make it out of the hospital this final time, he went back in because of pneumonia, that he probably would not be able to walk or feed himself or care for himself in any way, and he didn't want that. So I really do think there was an element of him saying, you know what, I'm good, I'm ready to go. Throughout my growing up, he always told me, I'm not afraid to die. When it's my time, it's okay. And a big part of that, I think, is because of his spirituality and his belief in a next life. So for me, watching him go was not terrible. In fact, I even had a conversation with him about a month before he passed about, what do you want the end of your life to be? Do you want to be in a care facility? Do you want to be taken care of? Do you want to look at assisted help in leaving your body? So I know he was thinking about those things. And because he did not fear death, and he believed that there was something else coming after that, I haven't felt a tremendous need to mourn. I mean, don't get me wrong, the day he died, I felt heavy. I felt like I was moving underwater. I would spontaneously a couple times in that day hyperventilate and weep. But I remember getting up at 2:30 a.m. that morning, meditating, and then deciding I needed to rewrite his eulogy. And in the middle of the night, as I was rewriting his eulogy, the words I was writing felt like they were the words he would have once spoken. It was the stories he wanted told about his life, the way he wanted to be remembered. That when I would think of my father, when I would meditate and connect with the spirit, I just felt lightness and joy and love. And honestly, I think that's how it should be, because when our souls leave our bodies, we're not weighed down by all the petty shit anymore. We return to that expansive space that understands the why and the what of our incarnation. We forgive. We hold no animosity. You listen to any near-death experiences and they tell you you move into this bliss state because that's what we really are inside. And so every time I would, and still try to energetically connect with my dad, I would feel nothing but joy. But I look at the people around me, my brothers, my mother, and there's a lot of tears. There's a lot of feeling of loss. And it's strange to me because I don't really feel like he's gone. I often describe my experience of dealing with loved ones as a little bit like they stepped into the next room. You know, maybe you won't be able to see them or hold them in the same way, but you can still hear them if you listen. You can still talk to them. They're still there. You still feel their presence. You still feel their love. And so I haven't been weeping and crying. At the funeral, I teared up a little bit when there was military service and they came with the Air Force men and did the folding of the flag. That was really beautiful. That was such a lovely ceremony. And I gave my eulogy twice. The first night I did tear up a little bit when I got to the point about his unconditional love for me when I came out and how amazingly supportive and healing that was. But I largely didn't cry. And since then, I've heard my brother has said something to my mom about how there's something wrong with that there's something wrong with me not crying. I get a lot of people coming up to me and acting as if I should be wallowing and exhausted and mourning and tearing out my hair. And I'm not those things. My father had a really difficult life. He was abandoned by his father. His mother dropped him off in orphanages because she couldn't or didn't want to care for him. She died in his arms when he was 13 years old. He was raised by a kind of frankly abusive stepfather who made him move every 6 months. He went to something like 9 different high schools before quitting early and joining the army. Much of his adult life was spent trying to prove himself and seek self-worth in unhelpful ways. He was an asshole to a lot of people. I think he had a lot of growth later in his life, but he had a really difficult life, and it's amazing he was even able to love and be as present as he was given all this early life trauma that he had. In many ways, he was a very good dad to me, and that is remarkable given where he came from. So no, I'm not sorry he passed. I feel like his soul is so much happier, and I hope and I pray and I feel that in his next incarnation, whatever that may be, he'll have an opportunity to move on, to incarnate into a family that's more loving and supportive, where he doesn't have the deck stacked against him so much. I think this was a good thing that he was able to transition. And I don't like that people make me feel bad that I'm celebrating his birth into this next life rather than being distraught that he left me. Because yes, of course I will miss him. That isn't a question. I will miss our several times a week phone call where he just wanted me to say hi. I call up and he just asks, "Are you doing well? It's nice to hear your voice. I was thinking about you." I loved our simple little phone calls that he just wanted to know where I was and that I was okay and that share a moment of connection and love. The thing that I've been feeling that I didn't anticipate, and it hasn't been like a surface level emotion, it's just more of the deeper down stuff, is reflections on my own mortality. When your parent goes, that's it. There's no longer a buffer between you and the other side. My grandparents are gone, my dad is gone. And granted, my father was older when he had me. He was 47 or 48 years old when I was born. So had he been a younger guy, I probably still would have had him for potentially another 20 years. But there is this feeling of like, I could be next. I could go at any moment. His mother died when she was 39 from cancer and, well, technically treatment for the cancer that caused a air bubble to go to her heart and killed her, and while my dad was holding her in the bedroom. It's been more of an existential thing of how much longer do I have here? And that feeling of some of my protection is gone. Not that my dad really protected me nowadays, and not that I really sought out his advice all that often, but knowing that he was there was a comfort. And I can still talk to him, and He's shown up in my dreams and I feel his presence. But it's not the same as going to go visit or calling him up. So life does feel different than I anticipated. But the morning hasn't been like other people's, like other people in my family. It has been my own. And what I'd like to say about that is all of us have our own experiences in life. Everybody goes through life differently. There is no one right way to feel or to move through experiences. Everyone's path is unique. And it's important that we value the fact that everyone's going to have their own experiences when it comes to living. And that's beautiful. We shouldn't try and tell people it should be a certain way. We should open to however life encourages us to be, whatever life gives us, and move through it with as much grace and mindfulness as we can. And just appreciate my experience is my own. It's going to be different from yours, from theirs, from anyone's. And so how can we be grateful for our own life journey?
So again, my name is Kalen, and I am the youngest son of Charles Strauss. And today I would like to explore the idea of what does it mean to leave a legacy? According to the dictionary, a legacy can be defined two ways. The first is a gift of money or property left behind for one's descendants. Now, I have not yet read or seen this will that I've heard them talk about, but I'm pretty sure that one doesn't apply to me. The second definition of legacy, however, fits much better. It is something transmitted by an ancestor for future generations. My father leaves behind a tremendous legacy in the lessons he taught us and in the life that he lived. Over the past week, I have reached out to many people letting them know about my father's passing, and some of the same things were repeated over and over again. Your father was an immensely kind man, I heard people say. Your father was such a generous man. And one person even said, I think it's so appropriate that he passed over at sunrise, because when I think of him, I think of the light that he brought to the world. When I reflect on my father's legacy, I think of the kindness he showed us. I think of the integrity with which he lived, his compassion, his bravery, his generosity of spirit. And I'd like to share a few quick stories to illustrate these qualities, if I may. When I was a young boy, aged probably around 7 to 9, my father would drag me to local libraries where he would stand up on a small stage with a flip chart and give inspirational talks about how people could improve their lives. Now, there might have been 10 people in the audience, and I was tasked with calling out the correct responses if no one else did. So for example, if he asked, what do people fail to do? It was my job to shout out, people fail to think. He loved self-help guys like Dale Carnegie, Og Mandino. I think he basically wanted to be Tony Robbins. He even had little round tokens printed with the words, round to it, written on them. Just in the off chance he'd run into somebody who would say something like, I'll work on improving my life when I get around to it. And then he'd have one to give them. I'm not sure how many of those he gave out, but it was a really good intention. And he wasn't a man who liked to use his hands, but I can remember as a little kid watching him glue mustard seeds onto little pins to give to people as a remembrance to say, if you have but the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. This legacy of wanting to help others was passed down to his 3 sons. Mark, Mike, myself, we are each coaches in our own respective way, each trying to make the world a little bit of a better place through the people we influence, inspire, encourage. And as I look around the room, I see how many of you, my father, inspired, encouraged, and perhaps having courage to then pay that forward to make the world a little bit better for others. Another legacy my father leaves behind is his honesty and his integrity. He was the kind of man who, if a toll booth was broken, he would still pay the toll instead of just driving straight through. He was the kind of person who, if someone overpaid him in a check, he would call the client and say, please send me the correct amount, I'm voiding this check. One story he loved to share was when I was 3 years old, they took me to Disney World, and we were leaving a gift shop, and he looked down and noticed I had a Mickey Mouse keychain around my finger. When he asked where did that come from, I said it got stuck there. And he made me, at 3 years old, turn around, go back to the store, explain what I had done, and give it back to the cashier. This is why now, at my current age, when I'm checking out at Chipotle, I have a burning desire in my gut to correct the clerk and say, no, that was 2 scoops of chicken, not 1, please charge me more. My father also leaves behind a legacy of deep compassion. Born in 1939, he grew up at a time where being same-sex attracted was something deeply shameful and something you kept hidden. So when I began questioning my orientation, it was initially something he did not want to discuss. I'm confident it probably brought up feelings of shame within him. But one day we were having a conversation and I apparently said something that made him change his mind. I said, Dad, would you prefer I just be alone for the rest of my life? And he paused, he took a breath, and he said no. And from that time, he became one of my biggest champions. So much so that when he sat down for lunch to meet my now husband, Anthony, he ended lunch by saying, quote, I don't think I could love you anymore if you were a blonde with big tits. But please, for a moment, just take a second and think about what that means. To tell your gay son that you love him unconditionally, especially coming from a generation that could have been almost inconceivable. His love and compassion transformed my life, and it will forever stay with me. This last week when I got to visit him in the hospital, and when I looked in his eyes, all I saw was unconditional love. Another part of his legacy was his willingness to follow through on promises. If he gave his word, he would do it. Growing up, he always told me that if I worked hard and got good grades, he would find a way to help me go to college to pay for it. But when I brought home my first college brochure during high school, he was a little shocked. Prices had gone up, especially since the last time he had seen the college tuition bill, which was marked 20 years prior. He wanted to say something snarky like, well, I guess you better start working more jobs. But instead, he again paused, breathed, and said, you worked hard. You keep working hard, and I'll find a way to get you there. Now, I want to point out, this time, my dad was barely scraping by. He was working nights as a blackjack dealer in a casino. Yes, earlier in his life, he had a much more lavish life where he wore floor-length fur coats, diamond-studded jewelry, had the best seats in town to all the shows. But those years ago, he was betrayed by people he trusted, lost his business, lost his insurance license, and fell into what he called a decade-long depression. He said that conversation about my college future pulled him out of it. He realized he had obligations to meet, and with the support of my mother and Michael, he rebuilt his business and found his self-worth again. He reclaimed his power, his belief in himself, and importantly, he kept his promise to me. He found a way to pay for my college tuition. Brene Brown says that a successful life is not defined by the fame or the money we achieve, but it's defined by the bravery in which we live, with which we live. When I look at my father, I see a very brave man. A man willing to love, despite the abandonment that Michael just talked about. His father leaving after he was born, his mother, who couldn't care for him and would leave him for weeks at a time at orphanages, and then died in his arms. his stepfather, Hank, to his face said, "I don't want you."
But I promised Barb.
But I promised your mother. Despite all that, he still learned how to love and to trust. And one of the things he was most proud of is telling me how he taught that same stepfather, Hank, how to love. By the end of Hank's life, they developed a wonderful relationship that was loving and deep. I see my father's bravery in his rebuilding of his business and taking care of his family. Despite being broken down and betrayed, I see his bravery in his commitment to honesty. And I see his bravery in his commitment to overcome prejudice and to love people for who they are. Peter Strobel said, "Legacy is not leaving something behind for other people. Legacy is leaving something behind in other people." Looking around this room and talking to you all, it is clear that my father left something behind meaningful in each of you. And I know as his son, I have been changed in profound and indelible ways by the character of the man I am so proud to call my father. My father believed in the progress of the soul. He believed that part of our reason for being here is to grow, to evolve, and to love more. And he personally believed that this journey took many lifetimes. I can remember as a boy him talking about past lives. He had memories of being a druid priest at a megalithic stone circle like Stonehenge, and how this life was an opportunity to learn from his mistakes in his previous one. Looking back on this life, I commend him for how much he grew and how much better he became. Even in this last year, he became softer, kinder, despite the difficult circumstances he was born into. If you ever visited him past Thanksgiving, you would notice he was probably watching some version of the movie A Christmas Carol. I think he identified with Scrooge. I think he identified with this transformation from being some miser to a generous man who inspired his community. I think he just kept watching it and saying, "This is my story." I couldn't be prouder of my father. I am so proud to be the son of Charles Strauss. Now, for years, he made the request that at his funeral, a specific song be shared. And he asked that one of the lyrics be changed. So at his behest, I'm going to read those song lyrics now. "And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway. And more, much more than this, I did it his way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this, I did it his way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried. I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that. And may I say, not in a shy way, oh no, not me. I did it his way. I will end with this. You all know my father was a deeply spiritual man, and he believed in energy, intuition, psychic phenomenon. Earlier this week, as I've been sharing stories about him, I've noticed lights flickering nearby that normally don't ever. Whenever I speak about him, I'm taking that as a sign that someone as spiritually attuned as my father can't help but share his love from beyond, bringing our attention to the light he still shines. For love knows no barriers, not even through in death. The love we've shared with him and others who have departed is always there. If only we're willing to reach for it, if only we're willing to turn on the light. In the end, my father's legacy is not in the things he accumulated, but in the love, the lessons, and the light that he left behind for each of us. His kindness, his integrity, compassion, generosity, and bravery live on through the lives he touched, and And so may we carry this legacy forward, remembering the greatest gift we can give in this life is the impact we have on each other. Thank you.
Thank you for listening this long. I'm sure this video is not going to be very popular, but it's what my heart felt called to talk about this week. I hope you are doing well, and if you ever need any sort of support in any way, don't hesitate to reach out. I love philosophizing on these things. So, my name is Kalen. This is Ecstatic Self. Blessings to you.